Oh, hi there. I didn't see you there. My name is Lucas Morneau, and I am an interdisciplinary artist from Corner Brook, Newfoundland and Labrador, and currently based in Sackville, New Brunswick. I want to thank you for taking the time to view my newest exhibition, Mascuerade, at the Craft Council of Newfoundland and Labrador's Lab Gallery, whether in person or virtually during these hard times. Masquerade is a series of 7 photographic diptychs exploring gender performativity, social conformity, and the mockery of those who choose not to conform to Western society's established gender roles. Queer people are demonized as monsters and perverts, and mocked as fairies and attention seekers. Through the alter ego of the queer mummer, each diptych depicts the labels and pejoratives that queer and gender nonconforming people endure due to the established binary of man and woman, and the societal expectations surrounding gender roles that come with these assigned genders. First and foremost, a small word on what the queer mummer is for those who don't know. The queer mummer is an alter ego that blends the traditional Newfoundland practice of mummering with the queer art of drag in order to deconstruct homophobic, heterosexist, and essentialist attitudes that still very much are prevalent in Western society. Mummering, like drag, involves cross-dressing, as stated in the popular Newfoundland song, Any Mummers Allowed In, by Simoni. By blending drag and mummering, the queer mummer demonstrates that mummering is, itself, a queer performance practice. In fact, the title of the name of the alter ego is tautology, as the original definition of queer means strange, and mummers are people dressed as strangers. Therefore, all mummers are queer. Both drag and mummering are tools for the multivocal expression of identity, and both blur and subvert the gender binary. Therefore, both drag and mummering queer public space in one way or another, and give license to the possibilities beyond the two-sex, two-gender system, offering concrete reconfigurations of gender and gender performance. Each diptych explores labels and pejoratives used against queer people through the use of crocheted mask and layers of makeup, which are then photographed through long exposure, roughly 30 seconds, and are only lit using a flashlight, further veiling the subject. The photographs are then printed through the gum oil process, an alternative non-silver process similar to the gum bichromate process. The gum oil process uses chromium salts, in this case potassium dichromate, and gum arabic, which are mixed and brushed onto paper by hand. The paper is then covered by a transparent positive of the image and exposed to UV light, hardening the gum around the highlights and midtones of the image. After washing the unhardened gum and chromium off the paper, a negative of the image remains on the paper in hardened gum. Once the paper is dry, oil paint is rubbed into the paper, adhering to the paper but not to the hardened gum. The paper is then washed and excess paint is sponged off, resulting in a velvety, high-contrast print. As a queer identifying man, I lived most of my life feeling as though I had to wear a masculine mask in order to hide my queerness to avoid physical and emotional abuse. I started creating Masquerade as a side project to the queer mummer. I moved back to Newfoundland in 2018 after completing my MFA and was working on a larger body of work with the queer mummer when I found that I had been feeling these societal pressures once again. For example, if I dressed too queer or painted my nails, I'd be considered an attention seeker by some people close to me. By photographing the images through long exposure, I wanted to emphasize the constant lingering effects of these societal pressures, how these snide comments and microaggressions haunt people like old hags. Other labels and pejoratives include the fairy, the monster, the punk, the hunter, and the jester. While this was all happening, I also noticed that through community engagement, young queer teens started to look up to me due to in part of me being visibly queer. While nowhere near being viewed as an idol of some sorts, I started to think about historically queer or gender nonconforming people. People who defied gender norms in times when doing so was not only dangerous, but could lead to one's death. I thought about Joan of Arc, who led the French to fight the British, regardless of being a woman, during times in which women were regarded more as property than as human. I also started thinking of other dichotomies that were prevalent in Western culture, such as good and evil. Most of the photographs depicted labels and pejoratives used to demonize queer and gender nonconforming people. In response, I decided to play with this dichotomy by creating the Saint, a representation of the posthumous idolatry that the LGBT+ community imparts on these historical figures, regardless of the complexities of their lives. I want to thank Arts&L and Cox & Palmer for helping fund this exhibition. It was through an Arts&L artist grant that I was able to create the photographs. And the crocheted outfits were created with the help of the Cox & Palmer Pivotal Point grant. I also want to thank the Craft Council of Newfoundland and Labrador for exhibiting the work in their gorgeous gallery in downtown St. John's. Furthermore, I want to thank Bruno Vinhas for all his help and support. Mascuerade is exhibiting in the lab galleries at the Craft Council of Newfoundland and Labrador from January 15th to February 19th. Cheers!